Hey everybody, it's Tina from the Lovers Conjure. Hello, happy Sunday. I hope you guys are all doing amazingly well. So I wanted to tell you guys a story that I've been wanting to tell for a while now, but I just haven't gotten around to making the video. My daughter is on her iPad in the other room, so if you hear her in the background talking to her friend, she's just chatting away, having a good old time playing video games. Okay, so as you probably guessed from the title, I was actually able to go to the light for like 5 minutes. I don't know how long it was, honestly, in a timing sense. Like, time didn't really exist up there, if that makes sense. But I wanted to tell you the story because it has a lot to do with how I got into this line of work. I mean, why I got into this line of work, why I became, very spiritual, this incident that happened was really like a big, when I look back, it was a big turning point for me, spiritually. And I'll tell you why. So I had grown up, in the church, basically. It was in church, from a very young age. I don't know, a few years old, 3 or 4, probably 5, until well into my teens. And I grew up in 2 different types of churches. A Methodist church was the first church I went to, and we got kicked out because my aunt, who is like 7 years older than me, got pregnant out of wedlock. So that was that for us. I'm from rural Georgia, so the rules are very stringent down there in the Bible Belt. So got kicked out of that church, and then I went to another church with a neighbor of mine who was like, they had a daughter my age, but that was called a Church of God, and that was more of a fundamentalist group church, if that makes sense, a fundamentalist religion. It was like a Baptist-based fundy group. I don't know how to explain it. It's called Church of God. But anyway, I went there until I was like in my teens, 13, I think, something like that. So I was raised, thinking that, on the Christian, foundation, basically, heaven and hell, God and the devil, angels and demons, like that kind of thing. Like, I was raised to believe that all of that existed, and that it existed in the way that it's depicted, by the Christian church. But from what I saw, it's actually a little different. Now, going back to that, what kind of screwed me up is that my grandmother, who was from Worms, Germany, where the religion of the Lutheran religion was founded. She grew up Lutheran, and was very religious, up until a certain age, I think. She had kind of, in her older years, gotten jaded, spiritually. And one of the things that she had said to me before she passed away was like, oh, there's no such thing as heaven, or hell. When you die, you just die, and that's it. It just ceased to exist, blackout, nothing, And so I carried that with me, and guess what? She sure did die. She died suddenly in 2007 of a heart attack. It was very unexpected. I had just gotten married. I just turned 25, and I was very close to my grandmother. Like, she raised me completely almost until I was 5, and then throughout my life, she was she was like my mom, honestly, in a lot of ways. I mean, she was the one that I would, like, when I lived overseas, I would come home to her. She took care of us as kids. Like, she was the one that would buy us clothes and make sure that there was food on the table. And, I grew up very, very poor. And my grandmother was the type of woman that could not bear to eat, anything unless her grandkids also had some of that. You know what I mean? Like, she was a very caring, kind woman who very much cared about her family and broke her back, her whole life to make sure that none of her people, went hungry. So, that's the kind of woman she was. So anyway, when she died, I was devastated. I was at a loss. She died in July 19th. And again, it was a heart attack. It happened very suddenly. It was really traumatic, all this stuff. And I was processing it. She was the first person that was really close to me that had died. I had had other people die in my life, but she was definitely the closest one. And again, it was like a shock, you know what I mean? She was just one of those people that you just think is just going to be there forever. When you're young, before you go through all these things, that's kind of how you feel. You get complacent, So anyway, I'm sleeping one night, and this was in August. This was a few weeks after she had died. I was in bed, and all of a sudden I feel like my body has I don't know how to explain it. I felt like I was like, whoop, like being lifted up like on an elevator almost. It was a physical feeling of being lifted. Now, again, I don't know what that was. I don't know. It didn't hurt at all. It was painful. It wasn't even scary. It was just like, whoop, you know what I mean? Like, you know, when you're on a like, I always think of the elevators in like the really tall high-rise buildings that go really fast, those express elevators, you know. We used to have one of those in the building I worked in Tampa, and I hated it. But it, you know, it takes you up like super duper fast, and then you kind of just stop and it's like, you know, and then ding, you're there. And that's kind of how it felt, but different, but similar, right? Okay, so anyway, I all of a sudden am standing in my grandmother's dining room, like dining room / den area. It was connected in her house. So I'm in her house and I look around and everything is there that was there. She had like I called it like a shrunk, like a wall unit in the dining room, and then like the dining room table, and you know, her couch was there that she sat on. It was like her spot. There was a chair, you know, there was all these things. Everything was there. But there was a window that faced directly across from where my grandmother sat, and it looked out into the backyard. There was like a big oak tree back there. We used to have like swings on it and stuff growing up. And she just looked out that window. She had like a bird feeder out there and stuff, you know, and this window, coming in from this window was this brilliant light. Like, I don't know how to explain it. It was the brightest light I had ever seen, and it filled the entire space. It just, everything was illuminated, like all of her furniture, you know, and this was like old furniture from like that had been moved from Germany back in like the, you know, late 70s, you know, and we're talking in the, you know, the 2000s now. This is old shit. They smoked in the house, like like, you know, it was a little dingy in there, but it looked, you know, at this time where I was standing, it looked like everything was perfect, like perfectly clean, brand new. Everything was just radiant, you know. That's the best way that I can explain it, just radiant, you know. And so I'm looking at all this furniture, and I'm looking at this light and in this room in awe, because I'm like, I felt like, I was literally there. Like, I was like, how the F did this happen? Because I knew consciously that I was in my bed, you know, in Florida. So I'm like, how did this happen, you know? And so I look over and there's my grandmother, you know, and she's standing there. And let me tell you, she looked like $1,000,000 effing bucks. Like, if you could take like the perfect day of your life, like where you were at your prime age, your prime health, like 22 years old, you know, it's your strongest point where you look good, you feel good, your body still feels good, all this stuff, you know what I mean, before life really hammers down on you. So if you could take that day, you know, and just pluck yourself and make yourself a version of that, right? Like a permanent version of that. That's what she looked like. Like, her health had been restored. I mean, all of the years of worry and stress and, you know, smoking and everything else on her face had just disappeared, you know, and she just looked luminous. I don't know how to explain it. She looked so good. And she opened her arms and she was like, Tina, you know, give me a hug. Like, she's calling me in for a hug, and I'm like, oh my God. So like, I go to give her a hug, and she was a tiny bit shorter than me. So I hugged her, and you know, I put my like head down like into her, kind of like her hair, her neck, like right in here, you know, because I was like, oh my gosh, I'm standing over her because I'm taller than her, you know. And I smelled her, like I took a breath in and I could smell her. Like, she smelled like her perfume, which I of course still keep, but B, I mean, it was like it smelled like her, you know what I mean? Like, it just, you've known somebody so long that you know the smell of their skin, you know, like that. So I mean, it was her, you know. And you know, she pulled kind of back from it, and she looked at me and she was like, I love you. And she said, hand me my purse. And I was like, what purse, you know? And she's like, it's over there. and it was like behind the chair that I used to sit in. It was like an armchair, and I used to sit in it and talk to her pretty much every night. Like especially when I was like coming back and forth from Germany, when I moved back to the States, I briefly lived with her until I got on my own 2 feet as well. And anytime I was there like that, I would, sit in that chair and talk to her at night, and we would smoke cigarettes, and she would drink her 2 Budweisers, and, we would just talk about stuff. And she's the one that got me into astrology. She taught me all of that. She taught me like all the Chinese zodiac stuff, all about, there's so many things. Like, I can't even tell you. She was a Pisces. But anyway, I reached back and I grabbed the purse, and I handed it to her. I was like, this one, and it was a red, like, pleather, purse, a red purse with a strap, about yay big, a normal looking purse, So I hand her the purse, and she opens it up. She's digging through it, and she pulls out her wallet. And out of her wallet, she pulls out one of those like checkbook calendars that, every grandma pretty much carries. And, in it, she opened it up like this, and she pointed at it, and she said, okay, Tina, don't forget. And I said, don't forget what? And she was like, don't forget, and I'm like, don't forget what, Grandma? And she just kept pointing at the calendar, and she's saying, don't forget. And I'm like, what do you mean, Grandma? What do you mean, don't forget what? And she's like, okay, I have to go. Bye, I love you. And it was like, all of a sudden, whoop, I'm back in the bed. So I wake up horrified, I'm just like, what the hell just happened? I woke up my husband at the time, and I'm trying to tell him, what just happened, and he's looking at me like I've lost my mind. He was just not a very warm person, you know what I mean? Like, he didn't have a lot of empathy, and so, like, he was like, Tina, go back to bed, you know what I mean? Like, he's like aggravated, that I'm trying to tell him what just happened. I'm like, dude, I just went to effing heaven. Like, you have no idea what just happened. And I, you know what I mean? I still felt like this, like, I don't know how to explain it. I could still smell my grandmother. So anyway, I go to work, and I get there, and I'm telling, I'm close to my coworkers, and I'm telling them, and they had seen me go through this whole thing with my grandmother dying and stuff, and it was crazy. So, they were very sympathetic to it, but I'm telling them, like, what happened, you know what I mean? I'm like, guys, you won't believe it, da 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 da. And all day long, all I could think about was, don't forget, don't forget, don't forget, and I'm like, don't forget what? And it was really bothering me, because I'm like, what did she mean by that, So I'm driving home from work, in Sarasota, da 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 da, and all of a sudden I'm like, oh my gosh. I was like, it's my little sister's birthday, and it was her 8th birthday. And guess what? The date, and this, if you are spiritual, if you're pretty advanced on this stuff, you'll know what this is. It was 8/8. Her birthday is Lionsgate. It's 8/8. For those of you that don't know what that is the day that the veil is the thinnest, of all days of the year. Between 8/8 and 9/9 is when, it's the thinnest. So there's a lot to it, but it's called Lionsgate if you want to look that up. Anyway, yeah, it was Lionsgate, and it was also my little sister's birthday, so she didn't want me to forget to call her and wish her a happy birthday in the short term. And in the long term, of course, Lionsgate now means a lot to me as someone who works with the spiritual realm, so I don't ever forget it. All right, guys, well, that's the story of how I went to heaven for about 5 minutes and what I saw. Thank you so much for watching. If you're new to my channel, please do consider subscribing. If you're not new to the channel, thank you so much for coming back. Please give this video a thumbs up if you liked it, and I will talk to you guys very, very soon. Bye.